what I'm hearing today has changed my mindset of what the funding is, communities in transition. It seems to be very much, this could be a DFC project, it could be a Department of Health project, but it sits within TEO. I was under the impression it was more paramilitary focused, whereas when you were going through your list, I think you had addictions and different things before you got to paramilitary. But just picking up on the 18 organisations that had contracts last year, totaling 3.78 million.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work out what each organisation gets? Like from the figures I have from last year, the least amount awarded to one of the groups was 29k, and the most awarded to one of the groups was 1.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
How do you assess that and assign each group an allocation of money to provide that service?
So this current year, which is coming to an end, 3.8 million, it was originally 2.3 million, and all the contracts were going to end in December. Those contracts were based on previous tender processes where we had put out invitations to tender and said we are looking for organisations to deliver, and then it was more themes, so it might have been culture and identity or personal transition. Those amounts were determined by assessing those tenders at that time. Then we got 1.5 million this year, which allowed us to extend those contracts up to the end of the financial year, which is Monday coming. So naturally, the amounts awarded to all organisations are different because the needs in each of the areas, according to the themes, were different. It was never going to be the same amount, the same organisation or different organisations for the same thing. And it will be different again going into the new financial year. We have 2.9 million, the tenders are out at the minute. The bidders will have to demonstrate what is the need for that particular intervention in that particular area. We will have to assess that with the help of other agencies and departments, and then we will award the contracts accordingly. So I fully expect there to be a broad range of amounts, again, across the delivery partners.
Back to the 8 geographical areas, that's based on 2016 data.
Yes.
At what point does a community and transition become a community transitioned?
Question.
Well, that's a much bigger question, which the programme itself has been grappling with. The Independent Reporting Commission has said there needs to be a much longer term approach to tackling paramilitarism. It won't be solved by March 2027, but there will still be a need for criminal justice and police and response alongside a community-based response which is trying to tackle the socio-economic issues, which is part of what CIT is doing. So if you're looking for metrics in terms of saying there's no more paramilitarism, then you need to look at the metrics for the entire programme. So one of those would be no more recruitment of paramilitaries, end in paramilitary activity, people feel safe in their communities. They're all constantly being measured and they're going in the right direction. We can demonstrate, for example, that paramilitary assaults, shootings and attacks have gone down steadily since the programme commenced.
In these 8 areas?
In these 8 areas.
But meanwhile you have North Antrim, where there's been a significant increase in the paramilitary crime task force being in the area, and there's no money has went there. You're still looking at data from 2016. And
remember that CIT is just limited to those 8 areas. But other parts of the programme, of which there's much more money, like the Paramilitary Crime Task Force, will be working everywhere. So they will be looking at the organised crime gangs, the large paramilitary gangs, and saying, where are they operating? So they're not limited to the 8 CIT areas. So there is ongoing work elsewhere.
At the same time, is there not an expectation where after the Paramilitary Crime Task Force has been in an area, you then come in with money to try and transition that community? Because that's live data of where there is, activity there now. Like, give you an example: Ballymoney, Dervick, Moss Side, Bushmills. Like, there's communities there. The community groups have came together, come and met me, crying out for money to try and get something for the young people to do. Youth projects, and I thought this is a perfect programme for them, and that's one of the reasons why I was pushing to bring you here. But it appears that's not even on your radar, essentially. That's not one of your focuses, because you're delving into health, you're delving into addiction, and that exists all over Northern Ireland. But when you're doing that, you're not following the communities that are trying to transition.
I would disagree, Timothy, because we are conscious of the other areas where there's paramilitary activity, and we would really like to try and get into those areas. If we got into new areas, I think what we would do is we would work with the community infrastructure and the statutory agencies to understand what the need is in those areas, and then design the interventions accordingly. So they would be tailored to the specific issues in North Antrim, for example. I simply don't have the money to be able to do that. What we're doing now has been confirmed that it's actually making a difference towards the overall tackle and paramilitarism programme. So the young people, for example, that we work with either have been impacted directly by paramilitaries because they've been exploited, they've been used for drug dealing, whatever, or they are at risk of falling into the hands of paramilitaries. So yes, while it might be youth work or it might be work through restorative practice in schools, which sits elsewhere, it is actually contributing to the overall objective of reducing paramilitarism.
So these 8 areas, how many of them have transitioned?
What is transitioning though? That's not an answer that I can give.
Well, is it a case then these areas forever and a day while this programme runs, these will be the areas you're focusing on?
I think that's a question for the overall programme. We're just a small part of it, and we have been given funding to continue for a further 2 years, and that's what we will do. And we can show the benefits and the evidence that has made it better for those areas, those community groups and the individuals involved.
So the 3 phases, have they all concentrated in these 8 areas?
Yes.
Sorry, could I just come in very quickly? So whenever the Deputy First Minister was here last autumn, I asked her, was the research, had it been commissioned for the scoping exercise for phase 3, and she said it was about to happen. So if you could speak to that.
Would that not indicate that they were looking at other areas?
Well, no, I mean, sorry, maybe I
So
wasn't,
she
maybe I
confirmed
wasn't
it was
clear
coming.
earlier. We have the research.
What does it
I
tell you
made the
about
bid.
North Antrim?
I made the bid for £5 million. We got 2.9. The bid was based on expanding into other areas. We didn't get the money, so I can't, unless I get more money, we can't expand. The actual areas that we go into will be a matter for ministers to determine.
You had mentioned ministerial conversations. Surely there's a priority list that it shouldn't be a minister saying, right, I have money, or we can get you more money, go into this area. Surely there must be a matrix to say, based on the crime, the paramilitary task force, this is an area which ranks in, that you have to go to next. You have to show a focus in, you have to invest in, you have to build community groups.
Yes.
I'm not getting that.
No, that's there. That's there. So the research was done by Queen's University. They looked at the methodology that was done in 2016-17. They have tried to replicate the methodology as best they can based on the range of data sets that are available from the various authorities, not just the PSNI but also Housing Executive, in terms of intimidations out of houses, community restorative justice organisations who have individuals who are under threat, for example. There are a range of data sources. So the researchers have used all that data.
When was the latest data, did you say?
Over the course of the last few months. I think we got it in
September 2024.
Yeah.
Can you share that with the committee?
I can take that request back, certainly.
And finally, if there's any of the other areas rank higher than the areas you prioritised, they still don't get a look in, is that right?
Well, the 8 areas are still in the list, but like I say, expansion could occur within some of the 8 areas, so that's also a consideration. So for example, Carrick and Larne, the research shows that actually the broader South Antrim area, bringing in Antrim, parts of Newton Abbey, Rathcoole, for example, Monkstown.
Up as far as Ballyclare.
So in theory that would be an expansion of the Carrick and Larne CIT area. So there's quite a lot of consideration and decisions that would need to be made about how expansion would occur and then how much that would cost. But yeah.
So you had mentioned areas of influence, that approach you're taking. So my constituents in North Antrim would love to sit down and talk to yourselves about the need that's there? Is that something you're willing to do?
I've had conversations with individuals from North Antrim. They've made representations to us, and we're very sympathetic, of course, but we don't have the money at this stage. If we're able to divert resources to other parts, we will aim to do that. But right now, we don't have the resources to do that.
Will you meet them?
I'm happy to meet anyone about this issue. Of course, absolutely. I mean, the reality is we're nearly £1 million down going into the next financial year. So we can't even do what we've been doing this year in the existing 8 areas, never mind new areas.
Okay. I'm very concerned by what we've just heard. So research has been commissioned through the public purse that's demonstrated where the structures are, where the need is at the minute, and yet this year by year, I appreciate there's the potential for a year's extension, is continuing to be awarded to areas that maybe in an independent, academically produced research would demonstrate that that's not the areas that most need it. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not
Well,
what
if
I'm
you
saying.
if you could give us the report so that we could see that for ourselves, that would be appreciated.
I can take that request back, Chair, yeah.
Go ahead, Sinead.
My question is really following on for that. I'm kind of sitting here with my mouth open, but I